Imagine this. You're standing in front of someone you love, someone whose presence once felt like sunlight after a long winter. They look at you, but the warmth is gone. Their eyes are polite, distant, as if they've already decided to retreat from the place you still call home. They don't say it outright, but something inside you knows. This chapter is ending, and there's nothing you can do to stop it. Your chest tightens. You tell yourself you're fine, that this is life, that people grow apart. But beneath all the rationalizing, there's a quiet, almost unbearable truth scratching at the inside of your mind. It's happening again. The faces change, the stories change, but the pain feels eerily familiar. Like a song you swore you'd forgotten, playing again when you least expect it. It's as if every heartbreak, every disillusionment, every betrayal of love is part of the same loop. Why does it hurt the same way every time? Why do we keep searching for love like it's salvation, only to end up kneeling before the same altar of disappointment? Love is the one thing everyone claims to understand, yet it remains one of the most misunderstood forces in human life. We talk about it endlessly, in books, in movies, in the whispered hopes we share before falling asleep. But what if most of what we believe about love is wrong? Not slightly misguided, not naive, but catastrophically wrong. What if your very definition of love is the reason you keep bleeding in the same places? Imagine peeling away every cultural cliché, every fairy tale ending, every social media performance of romance, and standing face to face with love in its rawest form. Not the Hollywood version, not the Instagram highlight reel, but the unpolished truth. Would you even recognize it? Or would it feel alien, uncomfortable, maybe even threatening? We like to think of love as something pure, unconditional, unshakable. But here's the paradox. The way most people love is not unconditional at all. It's transactional. It's a subtle form of self-preservation. We give, but only within the unspoken boundaries of what we can get back. We speak of sacrifice, yet most of us will only bleed for love if we are guaranteed a transfusion in return. And here's the darker truth. Many of us mistake attachment, dependency, and even control for love. You've felt it. The rush when someone finally sees you, really sees you. The intoxicating belief that you've found the missing piece. But have you ever stopped to ask why it feels like something was missing in the first place? What if love is not the missing piece at all, but the mirror that shows you the fracture already inside you? The ancient philosophers wrestled with this question long before dating apps and relationship coaches existed. Schopenhauer saw romantic love as nature's trick, an illusion designed to make us reproduce. Nietzsche warned against making love a replacement for self-mastery, calling it a form of self-forgetting. Jung believed that what we call love often disguises a projection. We fall not for the person, but for the reflection of our own unconscious needs shining back at us. If they're right, then love is not simply about connection, it's about collision. It's the meeting point between what you think you are and the parts of yourself you've buried so deep you've forgotten they exist. Think about it. When love ends, why does the pain feel like an identity crisis? Why does it shake the very ground of who you are? Because love doesn't just touch your emotions, it infiltrates your sense of self. You don't simply lose someone, you lose the version of yourself that existed in their presence. And if you've built too much of your worth on that reflection, you're not just grieving them, you're grieving yourself. Now here's the uncomfortable question you may have avoided asking. Do you truly love others for who they are, or for the way they make you feel about yourself? That question is dangerous, because it strips away the comfort of blaming love for your wounds. It forces you to see the deeper wound beneath it, the one that's been there long before any relationship began. It forces you to see that maybe you've been chasing love not because of what it is, but because of what you lack. And if that's the case, then every heartbreak is not just the ending of a story, it's the unmasking of a truth you didn't want to face. Love, in the way most people experience it, is not a gentle river. It's a mirror made of glass shards. You can see yourself in it, but if you press too close, you bleed. And every cut whispers the same lesson you've been ignoring. This was never about them. So what is the truth about love that no one tells you? The truth that will keep you from spending your whole life patching up the same wounds, mistaking the same patterns for fate. Before we can answer, we must step back into the shadows, into the hidden architecture of the human psyche. where love is less about devotion and more about survival. We must explore the unconscious contracts we make without knowing, the way our earliest experiences become the blueprint for every relationship thereafter. Because until you understand where your idea of love came from, you'll never see where it's been leading you. And until you confront that origin, you will keep mistaking pain for passion, dependency for devotion, and longing for love itself. The question is, are you willing to go there? Are you willing to dismantle the most sacred idea you've ever held, knowing it may never look the same again? If you are, then we can begin. But first, you need to see the problem for what it really is. The first lie you were told about love was not whispered to you by a lover. It was absorbed in childhood, before you could even name the feeling. You learned it not from romance movies or books, but from the unspoken agreements of your earliest relationships. You learned it in the pauses between your parents' words, in the look they gave you when you cried too loudly, in the way your needs were met, or not met, when you were vulnerable. You learned it in the quiet calculus of approval and disappointment that began shaping your nervous system long before you ever said, "I love you," to anyone. The truth is, the blueprint for your love life is written before you understand what love means. Psychologists call it attachment style. Philosophers might call it the shaping of the soul. Carl Jung would call it the early formation of your complexes, clusters of memories, emotions, and instincts that form your unconscious patterns. If your first experiences of love were mixed with inconsistency, neglect, or conditional affection, you learned that love is not simply a safe place. It is a place you must earn entry to. If those experiences were fused with fear or emotional chaos, you learned that love is unpredictable and survival depends on reading the subtle shifts in another person's moods. And if those experiences were laced with control or overprotection, you learned that love is a cage, warm perhaps, but suffocating all the same. Here's the unsettling part. Those early patterns don't just fade with age. They become the invisible scaffolding of your adult relationships. You may consciously believe you're free to choose partners, but unconsciously, you're searching for what feels familiar, not what is healthy. That's why people who grew up with emotionally distant parents often find themselves drawn to partners who are distant. Why those who felt unseen as children chase people who are hard to please. Why those raised in chaos may feel oddly restless in relationships that are calm, even safe. To the conscious mind, this seems irrational. Why would anyone seek the very dynamic that once hurt them? But to the unconscious, familiarity feels like safety, even if that familiarity is made of pain. Arthur Schopenhauer once wrote, "We are not free to love according to reason. Our heart is ruled by forces that reason does not know." This is what he meant. You are not choosing love in a vacuum. You are choosing love through the filter of your early emotional conditioning, through the invisible hand of needs and fears you've carried for decades. And here is the deeper paradox. You may think you're searching for love, but what you're really searching for is resolution. You are trying to rewrite the story that began in childhood, hoping that this time the parent figure, disguised as your partner, will give you the love you didn't get. Nietzsche saw this in another form. He warned against the tendency to repeat rather than to transform. In Thus Spoke Zarathustra, he speaks of the spirit of gravity, the force that pulls us back into old patterns, old values, old wounds. Unless confronted, this force ensures that your relationships will be less about discovering new love and more about reenacting ancient pain. This is why heartbreak cuts so deeply. It's not just the loss of a partner. It's the collapse of your latest attempt to fix the oldest wound. Now let's pull back the curtain further. The modern world complicates this even more. Society has turned love into both a commodity and a performance. You are bombarded with curated images of romance, grand proposals, anniversaries, and couples who seem perfectly attuned. Social media has made love into a public display, less about what is and more about what appears to be. This cultural theater distorts your expectations, creating a constant pressure to not just find love, but to prove it, to wear it like a badge of worthiness. And when you inevitably fall short of these artificial ideals, you don't just feel the loss of love, you feel defective. Aldous Huxley saw this danger long before Instagram existed. He warned that mass culture has the power to shape desires so deeply that we forget what was ours to begin with. We stop asking, "What do I truly need in love?" and start asking, "What kind of love makes me look complete in the eyes of others?" And so we chase not love itself, but the symbols of love, status, attention, validation, mistaking these for the thing they represent. Meanwhile, psychology adds another layer to this trap. Gabor Maté, who has spent decades studying addiction, argues that the deepest addictions are not to substances, but to emotional states. Love, in its distorted form, can be one of the most intoxicating addictions. Consider this: the highs of early romance light up the same dopamine pathways as drugs. The withdrawal after a breakup mirrors the neurochemical chaos of detox. Your body is not just missing the person, it is missing the chemical cocktail their presence triggered. This means you can be addicted to a person who is wrong for you, not because of who they are, but because of how they make your nervous system dance between ecstasy and despair. And like all addictions, this one convinces you that going back just one more time will fix everything. So here is the hidden problem in its rawest form. You are not simply looking for love. You are looking for love through the lens of your wounds, filtered by childhood blueprints, amplified by cultural illusions, and wired into your brain's reward system. And this lens distorts everything. It makes you believe rejection is proof you are unlovable, when it is often proof you chose someone incapable of giving what you need. It makes you confuse intensity with intimacy, drama with depth, chaos with passion. It convinces you that love's absence is the problem, when in reality, your definition of love may be the very thing keeping it out of reach. This is why no amount of dating advice, communication tips, or finding the right person will heal you, because the issue is not out there. It is in the inner architecture of your love itself. Until you see that architecture clearly, you will remain trapped in the cycle. Attraction, idealization, disappointment, heartbreak, numbness, attraction again. The characters will change. The script will not. Carl Jung once said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate." This is where you stand now, on the edge of seeing the real machinery behind your love life. And seeing it is dangerous, because once you see, you can never unsee. You will no longer be able to romanticize what is actually self-sabotage. But seeing is also the only path to freedom. The question is, if you truly understood this hidden architecture, what would it reveal about your past relationships, about the people you've chosen, about the way you've defined love itself, and more importantly, what would it reveal about the self you've been avoiding? To answer that, we must step into the consequences, the quiet, corrosive ways this hidden problem seeps into every corner of your life, shaping not just who you love, but who you become. Imagine a house with cracked foundations. From the outside, it looks fine. Painted walls, clean windows, maybe even a flower bed out front. But inside, the floors slope. The doors don't close properly, and every rainstorm sends water seeping into the walls. You can repaint the exterior 1,000 times, but until you repair the foundation, the house will keep falling apart. Your love life is that house. Most people never think to check the foundation because the cracks only show when the storms hit, when the argument erupts, when the silence grows heavy, when the text doesn't come. That's when the old blueprints reveal themselves, quietly steering you into the same ditch again and again. The first consequence of this hidden architecture is self-betrayal disguised as love. You've done it, ignoring your needs because you feared they'd scare someone away. You've swallowed words you needed to say because you didn't want to be too much. You've stayed when every fiber of your body screamed to leave, convincing yourself that loyalty was noble when, in truth, it was fear. And here's the bitter part. Every time you do this, you teach yourself that your needs are dangerous, that your voice is costly, that love and self-abandonment are the same thing. It's a slow erosion of self-respect, and over time it becomes your default mode, not just in romance, but in friendships, family, even work. You stop asking for what you want because somewhere along the way, you stopped believing you deserved it. The second consequence is more insidious. You begin to mistake familiarity for destiny. Your nervous system is a historian. It remembers the patterns that once kept you alive. If chaos, inconsistency, or emotional unavailability were part of your early love, those patterns feel oddly magnetic now. That magnetism is not fate, it's a trauma echo. But when you don't recognize it as such, you mistake the spark for compatibility. You tell yourself, "I've never felt this way before," when what you've really found is the same wound in a different body. It's like standing at the edge of a cliff you've fallen from before and convincing yourself that this time, gravity will be kinder. The third consequence, emotional dependency disguised as devotion. Our culture romanticizes the idea of two people needing each other, but there's a line between interdependence and dependence. Interdependence is healthy. It's the dance of give and take, of mutual reliance without loss of self. Dependency, on the other hand, is when your sense of worth, safety, and identity are tethered to another person's behavior. It's why a partner's withdrawal feels like suffocation. It's why rejection feels like annihilation. And it's why you tolerate treatment you'd never accept if you truly believed in your own worth. Dependency turns love into a hostage situation, and you are both the hostage and the captor. The fourth consequence is something Nietzsche would call the slow poisoning of the will. When you repeatedly experience love through the same wound, it trains you to expect disappointment, betrayal, or abandonment. Over time, this expectation hardens into a worldview. You begin to see life itself as unreliable, people as inherently unsafe, and love as something you must constantly guard against. This is where cynicism takes root. At first, it feels like wisdom. You tell yourself you're just realistic now, less naive. But cynicism is not wisdom. It is fear dressed up as intellect. And it doesn't just shield you from pain, it blocks you from depth, intimacy, and the very transformation love is meant to bring. The fifth consequence, your relationships start to shape your identity more than your own choices do. Every time you enter a relationship, you subtly mold yourself to fit the space the other person offers. A little less of this part of you, a little more of that. You shift, bend, edit yourself, sometimes so gradually you don't notice, until one day you look in the mirror and see a version of yourself built from compromises, a person who exists primarily in reaction to others. The danger here is existential. Jean-Paul Sartre warned that when we define ourselves through others' eyes, we become a being for others, instead of a being for itself. In other words, we stop existing as autonomous individuals and start existing as a role in someone else's narrative. When the relationship ends, so does the self you've been performing, and you're left with that hollow feeling, I don't even know who I am anymore. The sixth consequence, the world outside love begins to shrink. Because love feels like the ultimate source of validation, your other sources, passions, friendships, self-discovery, start to fade. Life becomes oriented around the relationship, and when that relationship falters, so does your sense of meaning. This is why breakups can feel like death. You're not just grieving a person, you're grieving the collapse of the ecosystem you built around them. Viktor Frankl once wrote that human beings cannot survive without meaning. When love is your only meaning, its loss is an existential vacuum. The seventh consequence might be the most dangerous. You stop questioning your definition of love altogether. You assume that the ache, the anxiety, the constant negotiating of worth are just part of love. You tell yourself relationships are hard work, and while that's true, there's a difference between healthy effort and chronic self-erasure. The danger is that you normalize dysfunction. You write pain into the very script of love, so much so that the idea of love without fear or control feels boring. This is how people end up walking away from healthy relationships, not because they weren't loved, but because peace felt alien. And all of this doesn't just live in your head, it lives in your body. Your nervous system remembers every rejection, every betrayal, every moment you swallowed your truth to keep someone close. Over time, your body begins to associate love with stress. Your baseline becomes hypervigilance, scanning for shifts in tone, changes in text response time, signs of withdrawal. This is why you can't just relax in love. Your body doesn't trust it, and no amount of reassurance from your partner can override the years of evidence your nervous system has collected. If you're not careful, these consequences become self-fulfilling. The more you expect pain, the more you act in ways that make pain inevitable. The more you fear abandonment, the more you grip tightly, and the tighter you grip, the more likely someone is to pull away. This is how the cycle perpetuates itself. Not because you're broken, not because you're unlucky, but because you've been living inside a definition of love that makes pain inevitable. The cruelest part? You might not even realize how much you've lost until much later. One day, years down the line, you wake up next to someone and realize you haven't felt fully alive in years. Or you look back at your 20s and see a trail of relationships that all feel like variations of the same story. Or you find yourself single and terrified, not because you're alone, but because without someone else's reflection, you feel like nothing at all. And yet, there is another path. A path where love does not require self-abandonment, where intimacy does not mean dependency, where connection does not feel like a gamble with your worth. But to take that path, you must be willing to rebel, not just against bad partners or cultural illusions, but against the deepest programming in your own mind. That rebellion is where transformation begins, and it is not gentle. It requires dismantling every illusion you've held about what love is, what it should feel like, and what it means about you. The question is, do you have the courage to betray the version of yourself that believed in the old story? Rebellion doesn't always look like fire and fury. Sometimes it begins in silence, in that moment when you hear the familiar voice inside you say, "Stay quiet, don't cause trouble, don't risk losing them," and you choose not to obey. It begins with the smallest act of treason against your conditioning, speaking the truth you were trained to swallow, walking away when you were taught to cling, choosing yourself when every nerve in your body tells you you'll regret it. And that is the heart of the rebellion. Understanding that breaking free from love's old pattern is not about finding the right person. It is about becoming the person who would never again accept a love that requires self-erasure. Step 1. Question everything you believe about love. Write it down. Literally, what? Do you believe love is supposed to feel like exciting, consuming, unpredictable, safe, exhausting? Then ask yourself where each of those beliefs came from. Did you see it in your parents' relationship? Did you learn it from a movie, a song, a novel? Did it come from a wound so old you can't remember the first time it bled? Carl Jung insisted that freedom, in the psychological sense, means disentangling yourself from the unconscious inheritance of your past. If your definition of love is inherited, whether from family, culture, or trauma, it's not truly yours, and you cannot be free inside someone else's definition. Step 2. Learn the difference between love and the chemical high of attachment. This is brutal work, because your body may crave the rush that comes from uncertainty, drama, or emotional whiplash. But as Gabor Maté warns, the thing you crave most is often the thing that hurt you first. Healthy love will feel calm, sometimes even simple. If you've been conditioned to equate love with intensity, this calm may feel foreign, even boring. This is where Nietzsche's advice becomes critical. Learn to love what is hard to love. In this case, that means retraining yourself to value stability and kindness over chaos and adrenaline. It will feel unnatural at first. Your nervous system will resist, but rebellion is not about comfort, it's about reprogramming your instincts. Step 3. Turn toward the shadow. Jung's concept of the shadow, the parts of ourselves we reject, repress, or deny, applies to love as much as any other domain of life. You cannot break the cycle until you face the truth about what you've been seeking in love, even if that truth is ugly. Do you use love as a way to feel worthy, to avoid loneliness, to distract yourself from unresolved grief, to prove something to someone who once doubted you? This is not self-condemnation, it's self-revelation. The shadow is not your enemy. It's the map to your freedom. Every pattern you can name loses some of its power over you. Step 4. Build a self so complete that love becomes a choice, not a necessity. Viktor Frankl argued that meaning must be forged from within. It cannot be outsourced to another person. This doesn't mean isolating yourself or rejecting intimacy. It means creating a life that is rich, purposeful, and whole before love enters it. Think of it like building a house with strong foundations. A partner may add beauty, warmth, and expansion, but they are not the walls holding you up. Pursue the passions you abandoned for relationships. Strengthen your friendships. Rediscover the parts of yourself that faded in the shadow of someone else's presence. The more you live fully, the less susceptible you are to mistaking survival for love. Step 5. Redefine your boundaries, not as walls, but as invitations. Many people think of boundaries as harsh lines meant to keep others out, but in healthy love, boundaries are the exact opposite. They are the structures that make safe closeness possible. A boundary says, "Here is where I end and you begin." It allows both people to exist fully without collapsing into each other. When you uphold a boundary, you may fear you'll lose someone, and sometimes you will. But anyone you lose for protecting yourself was never truly offering love. They were offering a trade you could no longer accept. Step 6. Practice micro-rebellions daily. Grand transformations are built from small, consistent acts. Tell the truth when it's inconvenient. Say no when every part of you wants to say yes, just to keep the peace. Let a text go unanswered if it's baiting you into an old pattern. Walk away from conversations that erode your dignity. These micro-rebellions are like strength training for the soul. Each one tells your nervous system, I can survive without betraying myself. Over time, this becomes your new normal. And here's the most radical step of L. Accept that love will always carry risk and choose it anyway. Rebellion does not mean armoring yourself to the point of invulnerability. That's just another form of fear. True freedom in love means knowing you could lose, knowing you could be hurt, and still choosing to open. This is where Sartre's philosophy becomes a compass. In a world without guarantees, the only authentic choice is the one you make fully aware of its risks. Choosing love from that place, not out of desperation or illusion, but out of conscious will, is the deepest rebellion of all. The first time you live this way, it will feel like stepping into a new country. The air will be different, the language will be different. You will meet people who feel unfamiliar, not because they're extraordinary, but because they don't trigger the old wounds you used to mistake for magic. You will discover a kind of love that doesn't make you smaller, that doesn't punish you for your needs, that doesn't make you perform to be chosen. And you'll realize this is what you were searching for all along, not a person to complete you, but a love that meets you whole. But here's the final truth about rebellion. It is not a one-time act. It is a way of living. Every day, you will be tempted to fall back into the old scripts, because they are comfortable, because they are familiar, because they are easy. The difference now is that you will see them for what they are, and once you see, you cannot go back. This is where the real power lies, not in never feeling fear again, but in knowing that fear no longer decides for you. Yet even here, even in the midst of newfound freedom, there is one final truth about love you still have not heard. A truth that will dissolve not just the illusions of romantic love, but the illusions you hold about yourself. It is the truth that changes not only how you love, but how you see reality by itself. Imagine standing alone in a darkened room. No noise, no motion, just you, the quiet, and the faint pulse of your own heartbeat. You've walked away from the old patterns. You've unlearned the lies. You've chosen yourself over the illusions that once held you hostage. And yet, in this stillness, you feel something unexpected, an emptiness. Not the desperate kind you once feared, but an emptiness like freshly turned soil, rich but bare. It's here, in this strange quiet, that the final truth about love reveals itself. You will never truly heal until you stop seeing love as something you get from another person and start seeing it as something you become. This is the part no one tells you. Love, in its truest form, is not an exchange. It is not a commodity you acquire by being desirable enough, worthy enough, patient enough. It is not a resource someone else can give or take away. The love you've been chasing all your life, the one you thought was hiding in someone's eyes, in their approval, in their willingness to stay. That love is not theirs to give, it's yours to uncover. The greatest illusion is that love lives out there, somewhere in the future, waiting for the right person to unlock it in you. But if love is only real when it comes from another, then you will always be a beggar, always dependent, always at the mercy of another person's choices. The final rebellion is realizing you are the source. Carl Jung believed that the deepest work of the human soul is individuation, the process of becoming whole within yourself. This wholeness is not isolation, it's the state from which you can offer love without fear and receive it without losing yourself. When you love from this place, you are no longer bargaining. You are no longer saying, if you leave, I will shatter. You are saying, I choose you freely, and if you go, I will grieve, but I will remain whole. The paradox is that once you no longer need love to survive, you become capable of experiencing it in its purest form. The desperation falls away, replaced by freedom. You no longer cling, you no longer perform, you no longer shapeshift to earn your place in someone's heart. And here is the miracle. The love that grows from this place is deeper, safer, and more enduring than anything you have known, because it is not built on fear. But this shift requires one last confrontation with the oldest wound of all, the belief that you are incomplete. That belief is the quiet engine behind every toxic relationship, every desperate chase, every compromise that cost you yourself. It whispers, you are not enough on your own. It convinces you that love is the missing piece. This is where the truth becomes sharp. You were never incomplete. What you lacked was not wholeness, it was awareness of it. You see, the search for love has never really been about another person. It has been about coming home to yourself. Every longing, every heartbreak, every ecstatic high and crushing low was pointing you back to the same place, the recognition that you are the source of the love you seek. Viktor Frankl said that meaning is not something we invent, it's something we discover. Love is the same. You don't create it by finding the perfect partner. You discover it by stripping away everything that convinced you it was outside yourself. And what happens once you know this? You stop hunting for the one to save you, and you start asking, who am I when I'm not performing for love? What kind of life feels worth living, even if no one is watching? What kind of love could I offer if I were no longer afraid of being left? These questions change everything. They strip away the layers of desperation and reveal a love that doesn't suffocate or consume. It breathes. This is not a love immune to pain. Opal will still leave. Loss will still hurt. But when you are the source, loss no longer destroys you. You can let love go without losing yourself. And that is the final liberation. The poets have always known this truth, though they often hid it in metaphors. Rumi wrote, your task is not to seek for love, but merely to seek and find all the barriers within yourself that you have built against it. This is not a romantic platitude, it's a psychological map. Those barriers are the wounds, the inherited definitions, the fears you've been dismantling all along. Remove them, and love doesn't just find you, you realize it was always here. And here's the final paradox. Once you no longer need love to fill you, you become the kind of person others are magnetically drawn to, not because you complete them, but because you don't demand they complete you. You love freely. You let them love freely. And in that freedom, intimacy deepens in ways control could never achieve. So here you are, standing in that quiet room, the soil of your inner world freshly turned. No storm of need, no gnawing hunger, just space. This is the space where real love can grow. Not the love that clings out of fear, not the love that withers under the weight of old wounds, not the love that's just a mirror for your unmet needs, but the love that comes from the wholeness you've built, love that is chosen, not begged for, love that is alive, not just performed, love that expands you without erasing you. And maybe years from now, you will meet someone who recognizes this wholeness in you, someone whose own wholeness makes them dangerous to your old patterns. You will walk toward each other without desperation, without illusion, and you will build something, not because you need it to survive, but because it is worth creating. And if one day they leave, you will not crumble. You will grieve, yes, you will feel the ache, but you will still stand because you never built your foundation on someone else's presence. You will know that love, in its truest form, was never theirs to give or take. It was yours all along. That is the final truth. You do not find love, you become it, and the moment you do, you will never again confuse its absence in another for its absence in yourself.